Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back, or welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin. I am Jason Podolin, and you're here for episode number 35. And I'm excited to be here for episode 35 because we have a man by the name of Dennis Maruk. Dennis Maruk was drafted in 1975. He was a 21st overall selection from the London Knights, where he tore it up as a junior. But he slid down the draft because of his size. He was a 5'8", 150-pounder who was tearing it wide open, but there were scouts that didn't think he could get it done at the NHL level, as is usually the case for undersized players. However, he showed up at his first camp for the California Seals, and he ended up making the team. And not only did he make the team, but he ended up finishing second in scoring to my old coach, Al McAdam, was first that year on the California Seals, and Dennis finished second. And he also finished third in the Calder Trophy award for the NHL's best rookie. He finished with 30 goals that season, which was 2 less than Brian Trottier, who ended up winning the Calder that year. But Dennis is maybe most known for being forgotten, ironically, because he had a 60-goal season. He's one of only 20 players in the history of the NHL to score 60 goals in a season. And he's probably the name that you would never remember or aren't aware of. And we talk about that, about why that happened and what that means to him. And it's a really interesting scenario because there are a lot of things happened. It was a 1981-82 season. He played on a team, and historically he played on teams that weren't good until he played for Minnesota. But when he was with California and he was with the Cleveland Barons and the Minnesota North Stars and the Capitals, they were struggling to put fans in the building. And his big season when he scored the 60 goals and had 136 points, he happened to do that in the same year where Wayne Gretzky, I think we all know who that is, scored 92 that year. And Mike Bossy scored 64. So what historically would have been an amazing season was kind of, underappreciated because somebody scored 92 and everyone was talking about Gretzky. And I think that was one of the reasons why Dennis wasn't really recognized or remembered for being such a prolific goal scorer. He had 50 the year before with Washington too. And we get into his entire story about what it was like to be a 5'8", 150-pounder in the NHL, what it was like to score 60, what it was like then to get traded to Minnesota and be relegated to a third, fourth line role for reasons unknown to him. But then all of a sudden he gets an opportunity there. It goes into the playoffs and he gets 13 points in 5 games. They get knocked out in 5 games by St. Louis, but he has an unbelievable playoff run there. So he's able to get it done at all levels of the game. He was a gritty player, and he was just a player that was respected. He talks about his book, and we talk about his book a lot. And the title of it is the unforgettable story of the forgotten 60-goal man. And that was co-written with Ken Reed, and it's by all accounts it's a great book. It's one you should go out and grab and support Dennis. He really shares everything in that book about his life. We get into some of the stuff here. He went into some serious depression after he got out of the game, trying to struggle to find his way, and he chronicles all that in the book. And Mr. Ken Reed was kind enough to hook us up. So Dennis and I were able to chat here today, and I really hope you enjoy his story and celebrate his story and talk about it, because it is one of those stories that I don't think enough of us hockey fans know. I mean, I played in the NHL. I consider myself to be a hockey fan, and I would never have guessed the name Dennis Maruk scored 60 goals in the NHL. So without further ado, I bring you Mr. Dennis Maruk. Here we are for Up My Hockey number 35. And for number 35, we brought on our first 60-goal man in the show. Really happy to have you, Mr. Maruk. Dennis Maruk, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's nice to call me Mr. Mark, but you can just call me Dennis. That's fine.
Perfect. Yeah, it was. I guess we'll start off with kind of what you're maybe most famous for, and from my scenario, it was interesting too because we already talked a little bit off camera about Ken Reed. So Ken Reed made an Instagram post is how we got connected. And you probably don't even know the backstory to that, but he said you guys were golfing, and he said one of us scored 60 in the NHL, and one of us, goes 320 off the tee. And anyways, like he had this description of the four guys in the foursome. And I was looking, and I'm like, who in the heck scored 60 goals there, right? And I was like, so I had to ask in the feed. And then anyways, Ken got back to me. And then so I looked you up, and when you had that phenomenal season, I was 6, right? I think so. So it wasn't like I was definitely a fan, but I wasn't really there to witness that. But in saying that, it's kind of crazy to me because I am a hockey guy, right? And quite honestly, I didn't know that you had done that. And is that does that kind of piss you off a little bit? It's kind of like you are a little bit unrecognizable.
You saw the title of the book, right?
Right.
Unforgettable Story of Hockey's Forgotten 60-Goal Man. That's kind of where we got started with the book and all that about that stuff. And yeah, it's kind of, I've done a bunch of tournaments and golf tournaments and stuff like that. And one tournament that a fellow puts up a big board, the top 10 scorers of that season. And there's Gretzky #1, Stastny, Bossy, and then there's my name. And then under my name, there's Marcel Dion, Yari Curry, Mark Messier, Dino Ciccarelli, some big names, and people going, your name? Why? How come you're up there? It's kind of like this kid from Rexdale, a small kid from Rexdale, Ontario, in the top 10 and almost right in the middle of the pack of some great hockey players. So was it frustrating? I think a lot had to do with, playing with teams that in my first 4 or 5 years of my career were not real successful. And so it got a little frustrating at that point. And then when I got to Washington, I did some nice things there. And still going over the years, and there's only been 20 guys to ever do that in the NHL since day one, and I'm in that group. So it's real special to me. Do I get the recognition? You're right. There's probably myself and Bernie Nichols are 2 guys that don't get the recognition of all that.
Right. And on a personal level, it seems like, obviously you got thick skin. You had to have to even have the success you had with with your size. And I'm sure you had a lot of adversity growing up, but where does that sit with you? Does it, are you over it kind of, or do you,
yeah, I'm, as you get older, you just keep going one day at a time. And, I get a lot of things that people, when they see my picture on Facebook or something, then I should be in the Hall of Fame and all that. So I think about that, and who knows? One day, you never know. Right. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. The greatest thing that for me was I had a dream as a boy, and as most Canadians do, and playing hockey growing up, and was able to play and make it to the NHL. But the size, as you mentioned, was a big issue because. When I did get drafted by the California Golden Seals, they had told me I was going to play in the minors and for a couple of years, and had to get a little bit stronger and all that kind of stuff. And my agent at that time was Boom Boom Jeffrion, and we didn't have a contract, and I had to go and keep showing and proving that my size was not a negative thing for me, that I can play with the big boys of my size. And ended up having a great game against Marcel Dion, and GM and the president of the team and the GM tapped me on the shoulder and says, call Boom Boom when we get back to Oakland, we're going to sign a contract. So I had to, all that's always been that issue and with my size, but playing 14 years in the National Hockey League and almost 1,000 games, I think that's not too bad. So I don't think size has anything to do with it. It's how you look at it and what you do as a player when you go on the ice.
Yeah, well, let's unpack that maybe a little bit. I want to hear that story. Actually, since you've already talked about it. I have heard you tell that story. I mean, you had a pretty good game, you said, against Marcel Dion. So, I mean, a pretty good game. Maybe expand on that a little bit. And you were 18-year-old kid, right? Or 19-year-old? 19 exhibition game, correct? If I'm right.
Exactly.
And you're playing against one of the greatest goal scorers in the game. And tell us about that game. How'd that unfold?
Well, I think we won. I had scored 6-1 or 2 or something. I had a couple goals, and it was just, I was just so excited. You know, I had a point to prove. I mean, basically, when they told me that, and we didn't sign a contract in the office in Oakland, I got kind of frustrated, a little disappointed, and I was kind of, maybe you could say, mad, and I wanted to prove to them, and I think so. I might have pushed myself a little bit more in that game. And it worked out pretty good. I mean, yes, playing against a great player like Marcel Dion, a good friend, a great guy. You know, and I showed them, and it was just, you know, I was relieved after when they did sign me to the contract, and they said they were not sending it to the minors, and that you know, took a lot of pressure off, and I was just ready to work on my game.
Was Marcel Dion, because I mean he wasn't a large guy either, kind of one of probably the best undersized players of all time. Was he somebody that you looked up to as a player growing up? Because he was a little bit older than you, correct?
Yes, definitely was a player. My idol was Bobby Hall, but one of the players from size wise would definitely be Marcel Dion. He forward on the book. And if you have a chance to read it, the forward part of it is kind of neat. At the end, he goes, you know, he was talking about my hockey and what we're like as smaller players, and we're like two pit bulls, and they don't stop; they just keep going. So you know, if you bite them, they just keep going, and that's kind of what I think back at it. Yeah, I got knocked down, I got cross-stuck, I got slashed, I got speared, I got everything hit in the head, I got everything you can think of, but it didn't stop me. No.
Right. Is that something? Yeah, is that something natural? Do you think, is that innate for you and for a guy like Marcel, or you know, or can that be developed? Because I think it's important for the young guys out there, because you know they need to have someone to look up to, and they need to hear, you know, how to make the most of it, and how size maybe doesn't matter. And maybe a modern day story of that is Nathan Gerbe, who at 5'4" is playing in the NHL, which absolutely blows my mind. But you know, was that something for you that you grew that? Maybe, I know you come from a big family, and obviously you probably got a scrap for your meal there a little bit too. Like, I don't know, where does that come from, do you think?
Well, I think it's that Ukrainian blood. I don't know, but the thick skin, as I always say, Ukrainian. But no, I've always been, you know, growing up as a child playing sports, kind of aggressive, even though I was not, you know, the tallest guy. And I got to about 13, everybody started growing, and I stopped. Everybody's getting taller, and I didn't grow too much. And I had the talent in the game and sports. I just wanted to be the best I could be at that sport, whether it's playing golf or tennis or, you know, doing baseball. And as I played lacrosse, I was a goalie in lacrosse, Rexdale Warriors. Growing up, some people say, "You're a goalie? Get out of here!" You know. So I mean, it was just, I had that aggression. Can you teach it? I think in a lot of cases you can. Sometimes players don't last in the NHL because of the fact they don't have that aggression. And they need to just keep challenging that and pushing themselves to be better. And I think I worked on a lot of areas in my game that I needed to work on. And some of the coaches and people would say, well, boy, you really improved in that, or you really changed that. The way you played, and make you a more all-round player, like killing penalties and blocking shots and things like that. And then here's a guy scoring 50, 60 goals, and he's blocking shots. So that's kind of what my thing to the young people is, always do something different than they expect you to do. They expect you to be a goal scorer if you're scoring goals and that. But there's always the other parts of the game that you need to be available. And if you're not available, then you're not going to get that chance. And that's what I tried to do. And I mean, it's shorthanded goals. And why am I killing penalties? You know, because I was fast and I blocked shots. I did things, and that's what it was.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I talk about good adaptability is one thing. Coachability is another thing, right? Like to be well-rounded. So you're not a one-trick pony out there. Definitely helps.
Right.
I mean, to play 14 years like you did, you have to do a lot of things well, and be well-rounded, because you can't score 60 goals every year. It just doesn't happen. So towards the end of your career, you got to be doing different things, and some people can grow into that and evolve, and some people just won't. And, like you said, your career definitely shows that you are willing to do different things. That's for sure. Getting back to the size thing with Nathan, like a guy like Nathan Gerbe had said, I read some stuff on him because I was like really, really enamored, like with the whole idea of 5'4", like, it's one, like it's 4
Bobby
inches shorter
Lalonde.
than,
I don't know if you remember Bobby Lalonde. He was short too.
right.
Yeah.
And he would say, like he wrote in this article, he said when he was growing up in minor hockey, because everyone told him, obviously, probably just like you, that he was too small and he was never going to make it. And he just made it a point that he was going to run the biggest guy on the ice every game, like the first thing he could do. And he said half the time he fell over and got knocked over. Sometimes it went well for him, but just to prove to himself and everyone on that ice that, it didn't matter to him. How big he was didn't matter. That it was almost like every day was like this, driven guy to prove that, no, my size doesn't matter. Like, did you have that type of a mindset going into the game that, I'm not only does it not matter, but I'm going to show everybody that I can play this style of game.
Yeah, it happened a little bit when I was younger, but really when I was in London junior with the Knights, I was traded for Mark Howe and ended up coming to London, and I didn't really want to leave Toronto. I didn't, and I live in London now, but I didn't want. I was a Toronto kid, wanted to play for the Toronto Marlies and wanted to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs and all that kind of story. But when I got in London, and a fellow by the name of Dave Hutchison, I don't know if you remember Big Dave, he played with the Kings and the Blackhawks.
Okay,
it's in the book too. And I asked him, we were in a golf tournament in London. I said, Dave, you play in the NHL, you play junior, play in NHL, what's it like? What do you got to do? And he said, he looked at me and he goes, I know you can score goals. I know you can make plays. I know you can do other things. But because of your size, you got to be a prick out there. And I go, what do you mean? He says, well, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. If he's the best player in the game, you go hit him, run him, get involved, get yourself involved. And you'll be amazed by doing all that, how much room you'll get. And that's exactly what I did. If it was Wayne Gretzky like I'll tell you a little story. Wayne Gretzky, we're facing off, and he go in Mini there, and he goes, Dennis, what are you hitting for? What are you doing all those things? You got a lot of talent. You don't have to hit people and and all that kind of stuff. Just go make some plays, score some goals. You don't have to do that. And I looked at him and I said, oh, are you going to start fighting now? So I'm not going to change my game, because it became being aggressive and all that became part of my game, cockiness out there. And I hit the biggest guy. I fell down, but we had brawls, we had all those, those things that went on, and I didn't back down. I think I had 13 fights, but I got beat up a little bit and a few fights and that. But I mean, that's part of the game. And if you didn't do that, you weren't going to last. Especially as a smaller player, you have to have, as we were saying, an aggression. You have to show that you can take it and you can give it as well. And I think that really did give me some space out there, and I earned a lot of respect from that. And I can tell you a story about Bobby Clark. The same thing. Face off against him, and people say he's probably one of the chippiest players in the game. Face off against him, and you knew that his stick was going to come right up at you. And so what you would do is try and beat him doing it. And then he'd stop doing it. And then after we were all done playing, and we did an event together in Toronto, and we were waiting to go on TV, and he looked at me and he goes, you're a little prick out there. And I looked at him and I says, you weren't too bad of a prick yourself, And then he goes, we had the lineups on the boards, they have the lineup of the visiting teams on the board. And he said, all we did was circle number 21, get him. Because I scored against Flyers a lot. I had great games against them, and when I played one, I'd beat them, and so that was a lot of respect when you hear that from a man like that. So I'm very
well, that's awesome, yeah, for sure.
Things like that he respected me for giving it back and respecting the game. Yeah.
What because I looked there, your rookie year was 75, 76. I know, that was right when the Broad Street bullies were in full effect, right? And for some of the, the younger listeners, we've kind of heard of that, and that sort of categorizes that era almost, right? That they brought in this different sort of level of toughness to the game. Like how was that era, like coming in at that time when men were men? There was, like you said, there was the brawls, there's a lot of toughness in the game. Was that, what do you remember of that team or even that era in general?
Yeah, well, during my first year, I came in at a $158.
Really?
5'8", so 5'8", and I got bounced around pretty good, and I knew I had to put on some weight and that's what I did. I came back to camp the next year at 185. So, and then I pretty much played my full career. During that time was you come to camp to get in shape. I mean, some of these guys are 35, 40 pounds overweight, 3 weeks of camp, skating and all that, they'd get back in shape because there was no games, right? And we had very few exhibition games. But that's what I ended up doing and ended up playing about 175. And during that time, we had the bullies, Philly was tough, but the Islanders were tough. But the team that I thought was the toughest they had during there was the Boston Bruins. Mm-hmm. They had the toughest wingers of any team that I played against, and they were tough. And they had that little ice matchbox to play in the Garden, and very little center ice there, and you just had to get out of the way of those guys. But they had some tough guys, and we had some good games. But you still had to be part of it. You had to participate. You had to play your game, and you couldn't sit back or things just weren't going to happen. So you had to hit them. Here I am trying to hit Terry O'Reilly, or I go hit Schultz, and then I'd laugh at him. I'd laugh at him, and he'd get mad. He'd get mad because why are you laughing at me? Because he's not going to fight me. He's going to look bad fighting the little guy.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? They look at Stan Jonathan with the Bruins. I mean, look at what type of fighter he was. What's he? About 5'7", 5'8", but just a scrappy guy. So that's just what it was. That's just what it was. It was a lot of toughness going on. As people ask me about today's game and what it was during our time, I think it was my time was more survival. And then because I was hurt every game, there's no doubt. Very few games that I wasn't hurt after the game from being crushed, speared, slashed, or whatever. And because I was a target, I was productive, and I was to be stopped. And that's what I had to deal with. So I had to give it back. I had to give it back. And I know we had a brawl in Philadelphia, and I think there was a picture in the paper. And here's me throwing a punch up to Bob Daly. Arrested, so he passed away, and I'm still about 1.5 foot away to even reach his chin. It was kind of neat. He's looking down at this little guy, and I'm looking up, trying to hit him, and nowhere near him. But that's just the way it was.
Yeah. Do you think I've mentioned it before a couple of times on this show, and one of the things that I was proud of, I mean, during the era that I played in, which was like the late 90s, 2000s, there was a big man era then, guys were tough, and it was still, they were still fighting, a lot of physicality. You had to pay the price to score your goals, whether it was in the NHL or in the minors. And now I kind of see that that side of it's even gone away more, like it seems like you don't have to be, I'll use quotes, as tough to be a player anymore. And, it sounds like that was something that you really identified with. And for me too, to score the 40 I did in the minors, like I know that I had to go in some dirty places, and I took those whacks and I took those hacks, and some people weren't willing to do that. Right. So like that was kind of part of the deal of being a player. And now I kind of don't see that as necessary as it used to be. Do you think that's a sad thing, or do you think that's just the way the game's going and so be it?
Well, yeah, I'm one of the, I should say, old school, but I like to see them come back to the center ice. I don't like them stand around that long pass, tip it in, go. I think they've made it entertaining for the fans to keep the game going. I think if they came back with the center ice, it would change a lot. The aggressive part of the game is there when you watch Vancouver and the Canucks and Calgary play the battle, or Edmonton and Calgary, battle of Alberta. You know what I mean? there's the most hits I've seen in any game. If you watch games now, I mean, there were maybe 5 or 6 hits, and they're talking about hit when they run into each other. They're not really hitting guys like we used to. The guys are running guys, hitting from behind, all that, and there's none of that. It's more finesse, money, finesse, pretty plays, and all that kind of stuff. Is it great? I think it's good for the fan. There's no doubt about it. As I was asked that question the other day about what do you think of the players today and the players of your time, and my comment was that even though there's great hockey players in the game today, a lot of them wouldn't be able to play in our time. Wouldn't be able to play because they'd have to change their game, just like I was just talking about.
Right.
That finesse is there, but not as much as you had to fight a little bit harder to get your goals, your assists, or stuff like that than it is today. I find it's easier to do that. Is it sad for me to say that I'm turning 65 and I still probably play 50, 60 games, charity events, that if I worked out, I could go play? Because you don't get hit. You don't have to put me on a power play. I still got the hands. I still score goals when I go and play, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, why should I say that? Why would I? Because I look at the game and it's totally different. Right. Like, meaning it's more wide open. The rules have changed. There's, how many times did we really get a 5-on-3? What is there, 4 or 5 a game in today's games? So we didn't have many of those. Referees were afraid to call another penalty.
Right.
I think during a make 5-on-3, they get booed and chased after the game or something. Yeah. But that's just the way it is. That's my impression. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too, because even now watching this, like the playoffs, I always like watching the playoffs now because that is when the physicality gets turned up and guys are starting to play. They let it go a little bit more and guys are a little more amped up and you do see more body checks. But even I've been watching it a little closer this year, and even this year in the playoffs, and this year is a weird playoffs. Obviously, it's strange, no fans in there and stuff, but it's still not quite the level that it's even used to, right? It seems like it's kind of just an intense regular season game almost to me. But anyways, so it goes. I do think that some of these guys, like the Wilsons and some of these bigger, stronger, heavier players are becoming more valuable again, though, because once the playoffs do turn around, a lot of these guys go away and they disappear because the physicality gets turned up, and that's when these bigger bodies, kind of a little bit more old school guys, really start to be they start to be valuable, and I like to see that personally. Let's go back to your first camp. You went 21st overall. Which was interesting because I looked at your draft and you actually had 2 of my former coaches in that draft. Brian Maxwell I had in Spokane, who went 4th overall that year, and Bruce Boudreau I played for in Lowell. So you had there's a couple of my ex-coaches in that draft there. What was that first camp like going for you? You end up making the team, like you said. You had that great game in exhibition. Like, was there? I don't know. It's just such a cool memory. I know me going to my first camp and, hanging out with these NHL guys and being on the ice with them and around them. What was your mindset like walking in there?
Well, going to California, there's a first thing. And, I didn't know what to expect. I just wanted to make sure I was ready for camp. I didn't know, the team was not real successful. If I had been drafted by Montreal or Boston, so I may not have the opportunity to break the lineup. We're in Oakland with California. We had some older guys, but a lot of younger players. And Ralph Klassen was the first pick of California in the first round, and I was the first pick in the second round. And we became 2 of the top centermen at 19 years old in that team. So to make the team was the exciting thing, and not being, as I was told by the GM and the president, that I was going to the minors my first couple of years. To make the team, it kind of proved to myself and to the people, the hockey world, and the people there, that I could play with the big boys.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I pulled up that team, and you played with another coach of mine, which was Al McAdam. So I played for Al McAdam in St. John's. Yeah, so you played with him for like 3 or 4 years, maybe even more. What was it like playing with Al?
Great man. I tell you, he's a big part of my career because playing with Al and another fellow by the name of Bobby Murdoch, we were called the famous 3M line. all last names started with
Yeah.
M. And Al was just you know what he's like, just a gentle Ben, but a tough guy. Yeah, don't piss him off. If he wants to fight, you're not going to win. He's going to win. Tough as nails, I'll tell you. There's no doubt about it. And I had the pleasure of playing and getting to know him. And my first three years there, and it was just a pleasure. Great man. He really helped me out tremendously because I mean, I didn't have to play with anybody else. Basically, he was my left winger, and Bob, the coach, kept us together.
And I saw that in your rookie year, you almost led that team in points. I mean, I'll beat you by one. It said there, and then the next year you took the lead. Like, that's a really successful rookie campaign. I mean, you stepped in and you made a big splash and scored 30 your first year and kind of didn't look back. Did you? So you already mentioned. So you and Al you guys were line mates. So that was, it kind of made sense that you guys were 1-2 like that.
Yeah, I think so. And I was kind of a playmaker, scorer. Al was the tough guy getting the corners, but I was in there with them. We'd fish the puck out and trying to work 2-on-1s and things like that. And then we had, Bobby Murdoch from Cranbrook, Donnie's brother, Bobby. I think one year he was in Salt Lake, and then they pulled up and they put us all together. We just had a good mob. We had a good shot and a good skater and that. So we worked well together, the three of us. So it was smart to Jack Tex Evans, our coach, to keep us all together.
Right. So you said you put on. So it was after your rookie season when you put on all that weight. Is that when you put on the 20 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And how did you? Was that like typical how guys would do it now? Did you hit the gym and push an iron, or how'd you end up putting on that weight?
I don't think I went to the gym till 1980 or 81. I just put on eating food late at night. A little bit of running and stuff like that, but nothing bulk wise, muscle. I do sit-ups, push-ups. That's basically what I was doing. And then we didn't start doing weights till when the Americans won the gold medal there. Herb Brooks is the coach, and that the conditioning and being in shape and all that kind of changed everything there. And then we started working on weights, and that's what it was.
Oh,
so I did mainly sit-ups and push-ups. I think that's
Gotcha.
the key. Your inner strength is if I go on put on 30 pounds of muscle, I'm not going to be flexible on the ice. I'm not going to be able to take good shots and have that flexibility. So I more or less worked on the inner strength, which was, of course, your legs, but your inner strength with the sit-ups and push-ups.
Right. Gotcha. So you didn't hit the gym till 80-81, which is like the year where you had your first like huge monster year with goals. I mean, you'd
Right.
gone, you'd switched over to Washington, and then you followed the 50 up with the 60. Like, it just seems like that was just like such a sweet pocket of time for you. Like, what was happening in those 2 seasons there where everything looks like everything was just going right as far as on the ice?
Well, I don't know if you know, Oakland lost out a bid on putting a new rink in there, so they moved to Cleveland Barons, 2 years there, and in 1 month we didn't even get paid. The team was going to fold in Cleveland, and all that kind of stuff. So it ended up merging with the North Stars, and that's how I ended up. There were so many players. Lou Nanny traded me to Washington. That's how I ended up going to Washington, and the 50-goal season, I played with 2 guys pretty much a lot. Bob the Hound Kelly, that was traded from Philadelphia to Washington, and Jean Pronovo, that came from Pittsburgh. And so these were the 2 older guys, experienced guys, and I was the crafty centerman. So for me to get 50 goals and that season was one thing that I'll remember, because, of course, our team wasn't the greatest, but I had 2 line mates that really made things work for me during that time. And then it just carried on to the next year, where I ended up playing with Ryan Walter and Chris Valentine. And I have to thank Mr. Brian Murray, that our coach at that time. He gave me a lot of ice time. We were on the power play together. He kept our line together so that we could work on some things in practice and turn it into tried it in the game. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Right. But Ryan had a great year that year through, and I think Ryan was in 30s, and so was Chris, and I had 60. It wasn't too bad for a line that the team didn't have a lot of success.
Right. Yeah, I know. So that 50 goal season, do you remember the 50th goal? Like, was it in the last game? Was it the second last game?
Yeah, I remember that, but I don't know. My biggest, well, of course, making the NHL, but as you probably agree to about your first goal in the NHL was the one I always remember. It was in Toronto, Maple Leaf Gardens, and in front of my family, mom and dad and friends, and all that kind of stuff were there. So it's a pretty special time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey there, just a quick break from a conversation with Dennis to remind you that I know you're probably listening on an iPhone right now, and you're probably listening to it on iTunes. And if you're listening to it on an iPhone and on iTunes, you can stop right now, go to the episode title or the podcast title Up My Hockey, and it'll say ratings and review. It's one little tab. It takes 2 seconds. Press 5 stars, and you can be on your way listening again. Or if you want to take the extra 27 seconds, you can write a comment and give it a review. And that would be amazing. So, yeah, do what you can. Support what we're doing here. Please, it doesn't take much. It's a small ask, I think, to take the time to press the button, and it helps grow this thing even more. We are crazily going up the charts, which is awesome, but it's people like you who will take the time to do the little things that really makes a difference and helps it grow. So thanks again, and back to the podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, that 60 goal season, we touched on it a little bit, and before we were speaking, I was just thinking, like, why was it overshadowed, or why potentially is it not that recognized? And then it kind of came to me that, well, I mean, it was also the same year Gretzky scored 92, so like,
who's that guy?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Who's that guy? So, I mean, which is still, the most goals in a season. So, and I think Bossy, if I'm not correct, scored 64 that year. So, you had this unbelievable year, right? Scoring 60, but it was third place, and a guy scored 30 more goals than you, 34 or whatever, 32 more goals than you. And I guess, everyone must have been talking about that, right? Like, for the most part, Gretzky blowing the league up.
Yeah, exactly. Over 200 points in that. But look, I mean, great hockey player, no doubt. Great man. I've met him many times, but you look at the lineup he had, and you look at the lineup I had, or our team, the players. For him to get all his, look at Messi, Curry, come on, go to Coffee, all those guys, and they won so many Stanley Cups, and they're a great team. But he's a phenomenal player. There's no doubt about it. So, I think that's what it is. It's just, was I disappointed of that? Yeah, I think maybe a little bit, because I don't think too many people are going to get 136 points in a season now. And to do that in Washington and be the first 60 goal scorer there in Washington as a Capellan, myself and Ovechkin, it's pretty special. So, I just got to live with those things.
Sure. What was that year like? I mean, now not necessarily like your experience with scoring 60, but like being in the league with Gretzky now coming in there, doing what he was doing. There was a lot of buzz about him for obvious reasons, and the 92 goals. Like, what was being said in dressing rooms about him and that team? Was he obviously recognized as just being that special, or what?
Yeah, he was great. He could do so many different things, but you also have to have the personnel to do those things. You pass it to someone else who's not really a goal scorer, and it's not going to do that thing, like Anderson or Curry and Messi, all the goal scorers too as well. So, but he could just do so many different things. If you get on a power play, you don't want to take penalties against that team, because their power play is so. You look at that, it's like, oh boy. I think one time Minnesota, we had a game against them. It was 12-8. The 20 goals in a game, 12-8. Like, come on, man. But that's because they were so explosive and they were so good. I mean, one time in the mid 80s, we had to play them to go to the finals because we'd win the Norris, the Chuck Norris division, as we called it. Yeah. And then we had a great team. We had a team that could probably beat them, but they just had so much power. We had them 4-1, and the third game in Minnesota at the Met Center, and they beat us 7-5. And we played great. We didn't like sit back in that form. No, we played even better after that. But they just turned it on like any time. That's just the way they were. If you watch them game in game out or follow their careers, they were just so, they were a team of the 80s. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it because of the talent they had on the team.
Yeah.
But I mean, playing, doing those things and getting those points and being in the top 10 and scoring with the team that we had and being amongst those players, I'll never forget that because it was just exciting. That year, I probably could have had 80 goals and could have had a lot more points too, just the way it was.
Right. Yeah. Just one of those years, hey? They just came together.
Everything was going, yeah.
The one thing I noticed too, Dennis, was that, your 136 was 49 more points than the next best guy on your team. I mean, so that's saying something too, as far as you being the straw that stirred the drink there, to do that well, then the other thing too, I checked on the flip side, and with Gretzky, the year he scored 92, I mean, the same year you scored 60 and he had 212 points. Anderson, which surprised me, was second on the Oilers in scoring, and he had like 105 or something. So Gretzky had 100 more points than second place. Like, that's insane too, right? Like crazy numbers. And I love their team. I that's the year that their team, I think, scored 405 goals or 410 goals. Like, right? So if they got shut out, which I'm sure they never did, they'd have to score 10 goals the next game to equal that output, right? That's crazy goal output. Wow.
What's his name? Their goalie, Grant Fuhr, and he moved. But Fuhr's, I don't think he had enough. Didn't get enough credit for the how great he played. I mean, because the other teams had so many scoring chances.
Right.
They were an explosive team, and they didn't. Did they worry about defense? Yeah, they did. They had defensemen and all that, but you would always there'd be 2-on-1s or great scoring chances, and Grant played great in that for him.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Back to your story, because the one thing that intrigued me about your stat line was checking after the 60 goals. Like, you went to 31, which by all means is an unbelievable year still in the NHL, but it is half what the output was the year before, and then you went down to 17. What happened there after that 60 goal season? Was there something, like, was there an injury, or was it just that's the way it goes sometimes, that not every season is a 60 goal year?
I got traded to Minnesota, and like Lou Nanne didn't keep me when Cleveland and Minnesota merged. He traded me, right? And I had some great years in Washington. I ended up getting traded back there, and I think I know maybe the reason why I was let go in Washington. Bobby Carpenter just arrived. Bobby Carpenter had a 50-goal season, and it was either they were going to play Bobby a lot more or play me a lot or whatever. So I think they had to make a decision. They ended up letting me go so they could have that opportunity. And when I got to Minnesota, Lou Nanne just said, "Well, we loaned you out to Washington for 5 years and we got you back." But I didn't play much. I was on, they had Neil Broughton, they had other centermen that Lou Nanne that liked, and Lou Nanne was the one that kind of, ran the team, even though he wasn't the coach.
Mm-hmm.
But the coaches who played, and so I didn't get played as much. I was on a third and fourth line and stuff like that there. So I ended up probably, if you look, probably 60, 70 points a season for third, fourth line player. That's not bad.
I know.
If I would have got the ice time that I was getting in Washington, I would have been up over 100 points easy. Gotcha. I know that for a fact. And I mean, because it just happened. I was always ready just in case something happened in sentiment. I was always ready because I knew they had to play me at some point. They were paying me, so they had to play me. If you're going to sit me on a bench and pay me, you're kind of crazy,
Right.
So I asked to be traded to Toronto. I wanted to play my last few years in Maple Leafs and Lou Nanne. I'm not trading to Toronto because you're in the same division. So that never happened. But I had some good years in Minnesota. We had a good team and stuff like that. So yeah, I think at one point in time that they were going to trade me, and it's a good story how I would dealing with adversity. I was the odd man out. I was the extra man. And when we went on the road, I didn't practice with the team. I practiced by myself and went for about 8 games. That I was they didn't want me to get hurt or anything like that because he was trying to trade me. And then Neil Broughton got hurt, put me in the lineup. I had 2 goals and 2 assists. Never got out of the lineup. It was near the end of the season. And then in the playoffs, they put myself, Kent Nielsen, and Brian Bellows together. And against St. Louis, we lost 5-game series, but I had 15 points. Wow. So, you have to deal with adversity, and that's part of it. And you become a better person when you can challenge yourself to do that.
Yeah, 100%. How did you deal with that? So, you're sitting there, you're not really a part of the team. You've had this amazing, you've had amazing seasons. You know what you can do, and now you're on the outside looking in. What was the message you were giving yourself?
Well, you have mixed emotions because you don't know, is this the end of your career? You wonder if it's time to move on, or do you want to continue on playing? And so I just said I wanted to continue on playing. I didn't complain about it or anything like that. I just went on my own business and worked hard on what just in case there was a trade and I was ready. And I think that's what I had to do. And that's what makes you a better person and a better man, to be able to deal with something like that, and knowing that it's not right. There's always, you get knocked down, you can get up, and but there's always another door open or something. You have to think about things like that there is something better out there. So that's kind of what pushed me. Was I always felt that there was another team out there, or something was going to happen to get better, and it did. I mean, they didn't trade me, and someone got hurt, and I get him back in the lineup, and that was it.
Yeah, and what a phenomenal playoff there! Wow, 13 points in 5 games. Too bad you couldn't keep her going there. Was that a 5-game series?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. Well done on that. The biggest run there you had was that the year that when you got the 16 games there in the playoffs? What round did you guys get to that year with Minnesota?
Oh, we got right to the before to go to the last round. Yeah, that was the Oilers. Yeah, we had to beat them to go to the finals. Yeah,
gotcha.
That was for the conference shot. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So you ran into that crew on their way to a cup. Hey, how did that series go?
Yeah, as I was saying, we had a great four-game series. We lost four straight, but one game was overtime. As I said, the other game, the 7-5 game, and the other games were real close, 4-2. So right. We were the team. We had like Cicerelli, Broughton, Hartsburg, you name it. We had some great players in there. Steve Payne. We were, and Joe Malashnet, Donnie Beaupre. So we had good goaltending. We had Brad Maxwell on defense.
Brian Bellows too. I just
Brian Bellows, yeah,
heck of a player.
And we had some. Scotty Bukes was there with Dino and Neil. We had a great team, and we just didn't have enough firepower that they had, and it was common sense. You could just look at their lineup or look at our lineup. Yeah. We had a real strong team. Basil McCray. We had a tough team as well. Dan Manders, Basil McCray. We guys that could fight and do all that kind of stuff, just with what Edmonton had, but they just had more firepower.
When going back to that time when you were out of the lineup and you were kind of just keeping your nose to the grindstone, that was back in an era, I assume, that kind of coaches there wasn't such a thing as a one-on-one meeting. You said you didn't say anything. Like, was anything communicated to you there? Did a coach tell you, hey, you got to do this to get back in the lineup? Or, I mean, how was that experience as far as dealing it from a player coach perspective?
No, I wasn't really talked about, or I didn't go in and talk. All I was told with Lou Nanny that they were going to try and trade me. Yeah. And I said, okay. So that was frustrating, but I didn't go into the office or talk to Lou unless he called me in and wanted to talk, that here, this team situation, the team wants you and all that. I didn't even get any. My lawyer was Alan Eagleson, and so he just heard a few teams, but nothing was really finalized and stuff like that. So yeah. That's just you just deal with it and move. It's frustrating as an athlete to go through something like that. To you question your self-worth, and then you look back at what you've done in your career and look at that, and you say, if you can still play, stay healthy and still play, boom, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would set my mind to. And this is basically what I wanted to still play.
Yeah. And you got to be ready for your opportunities, right? I mean, that's the thing that you said, you stayed ready, right? And then that guy got hurt and you took advantage of the opportunity. The timing of that and being ready and prepared for that as a player is a pretty critical thing at the professional level.
Yeah. And at that time, age-wise too, I didn't want to be traded. I want to go to another city. My kids were in school in Minneapolis, and I liked the city. I liked what it had to offer for a family and all that kind of stuff. So, wife had a job, and real good job. So you really to upgrade and move, but I still wanted to play, and ended up I was ready. I showed them, and they didn't trade me.
Yeah, awesome. And I saw from one of the pages in the book there too that you had a tough injury there at the end with your knee, and sounds like that was kind of the beginning of the end of the career. Is that how it went down?
I guess you could say that. Yeah, our coach of it was Herb Brooks, and the late Herb Brooks, and he it was kind of interesting because the team was not doing well, and he was put me on killing a penalty. And I slid out and blocked the slap shot. And my shin pad moved, Grant Lydiard's shot, and shattered my kneecap. So, and then it was kind of nice after I had the cast on. They put it all back together, and Herb Brooks would say, "Look at you guys. There's a 60-goal scorer sliding out, blocking slap shots on penalty kill. Why can't some of you guys do that?" Of course. He was kind of making an example of that you can do other things and you can to make things better as a team. And some guys say, well, he got hurt, but, it's just one of those things that happened. My shin pad moved. It took a long time. And when I got back, the coach at the time was Pierre Pagé, and I played a little bit. They sent me down to the minors for conditioning, to skate a lot and see how it was, and I thought it was fine. I came back and played 5-6 games, didn't play much, and I just said, yeah, that's it, done. So kind of the injury and kind of getting up there in age and give someone else a chance to play in the NHL.
Right. And then, I mean, I think, again, I didn't have an opportunity to read the book, and I'm definitely gonna grab it afterwards. But it sounds like the transition out of the sport wasn't quite what you were expecting, or maybe really ready for. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely there. I think their situation became, when we're playing as players, we were told that don't worry about after you're done. There'll be a lot of doors open for you. Whatever you'd like to do, and the doors for me were, I don't know, real small, and so I struggled with that. I went from job to job, frustrating and certain things, and it was became, I was all over the place. Divorces, lived in certain places, struggled really in the real world. Because I think you're a failure when even though you're successful in your hockey career, but you think you're a failure because your hockey career was not going to go the rest of your life. You still had to do something. I didn't prepare myself for because of that being mentioned that there was going to be opportunities, and I didn't really get a lot of opportunities, so I had to do a lot on my own, and it became really, really frustrating, and it led to some very personal things that. I might not have been sitting right here talking to you. So I did try. We'll read it in the book. I did try to end my life, and was living in Aspen and driving to Vegas to end my life. So lucky things happen. Someone was taking care of me because I had too much of those alcohol in me, and decided to make a judgment move, and I passed out in Utah, and I was 5 feet from the cliff. I pulled out, and the sunlight woke me up in the car, and I got out, walked 5 feet, and I was ready. And if I didn't go 5 feet to the right, I would not be sitting right here, because that was the Grand Canyon. And I turned around. I just kind of went, "What am I doing?" And turned around, went back to Aspen. And
Right.
my daughter who lives in Miami is my best supporter. She is the one that probably saved me from being going through all those hardships and all that. But everything's fine now. I have no issues except COVID-19.
Yeah.
And things have been great. Family's great. Everybody's great. I'm engaged, fiance here in London, and whenever COVID goes, we'll get married. But other than that, everything's awesome. Yeah, kids are great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was like, so I mean, people talk, mental health is a big topic right now, especially with COVID too, and how people are dealing with it. Everyone has a different experience with what's going on, and even the NHL in general is with the diversity committee, and like we're trying to make people comfortable, and hopefully people get the support. When you were going through what you were going through, what was bottom? Like you said, you turned the car around there. Like what was, if you don't mind sharing, like what was the downward side of that? Like what were you upset about? And then how did you turn it around? Like what was the choice that you made, or what was the pivot point?
The hardest thing to tell people is, and unless you've been there, is rock bottom. The rock bottom, and that's it. Nothing's going right in your life, not only financially, personally, and all that kind of stuff. And you just hit. Where do you turn to? What do you do? And when you don't have a lot of support and a lot of things, then you really try to take it upon yourself, and which is the worst thing to do. And I think that's what happened. I tried to take it upon myself, and it got worse. And that's where it hit me rock bottom. And that was it. I was done. I'm calling my kids and tell them I love them, and thanks for, good luck in your life and all that. And it was just a very traumatic thing. And when I was driving, that's what I was driving real slow, major road and everything. And it was just kind of like, I look back, and I couldn't drive anymore. And when I woke up, the sunlight woke me up, and I got out of the car. When I looked at that cliff, that changed my mind. And I said to myself, I got more things to do in my life. What am I doing? It was just like a click, or like putting a gun to your mouth, and you smell the powder and go, "Oh, I ain't gonna do that. I got more things to do in my life." And I realized, all the way driving back from Utah to Aspen, where I was living, I got kids, I got grandkids. I'll have grandkids. I'll have all this going on, and what are they gonna think? I'm not being around. So and so my daughter, we really talked a lot about personal things in life, and the good and the bad and all that. I mean, she talked to me almost every day, every other day, and she was concerned, and so she was my savior of making me realize the important word is love and respect, and what you have and what you've done in your life, and that your life is good. You have obstacles, you just have to challenge yourself to get by them.
Yeah, good for her and good for you. It's
So that's what it was. That's basically what it was. It wasn't any, bird coming down and telling me. That's what it was. It was just, for some reason, I had to be that cliff.
Right. Yeah, the thing that strikes me about what you just spoke about there, and you said you try and do it yourself, and you're almost feeling like you're on an island. And I think men, and I'll just say men, because I'm sure there's ladies out there that experience the same thing, right. But I think there's something about being a guy that, like, we kind of feel that we're supposed to be handling things,
Right.
that we're not supposed to feel some of these things. And then you said, part of the reason why you're able to get through it was the support factor. Is that maybe one of the lessons, like, of that thing, and maybe a message to men or just people out there in general, is to, don't be afraid to talk about it, or don't be afraid to ask for help?
Yes, I think you're right. Definitely. It's very important to ask for help. I mean, because these professional psychologists and all that, they've been through these with other people, and they've experienced it with other people. And so they have answers for you. They have the timing, the right words and right things. So I definitely believe that, yes, if you are struggling and you definitely don't take it upon yourself. You have to go seek help. And I think that's where we really didn't have a lot of that support, because of during our careers, my time now, during our careers, we didn't have a lot of support. We didn't have that what they have today. It started to get better. It started to get better, but it still wasn't a lot. And if you can look through, there's a lot of guys that, and you go, I'm 65, and guys that went through my time, some of them are passing away, and some of them really, if you talk to them, really struggled in their life because of not only financial, because yeah, we love the game, but we didn't make a lot of money, but still to move on in another world, your new career, and struggle. But so there's been a lot of guys that have been problems. You look at what's his name. I feel sad for him, and we've tried to help him. What's his name?
Murph.
Murph, yeah,
Yeah.
Joe Murphy. I'm real
Yeah.
sad, real
Yeah.
sad. I mean, but there's he's got help. He's had help, but he doesn't want it, and so he's taken upon himself. See,
Yeah.
and I think that's a mistake, and I hope one time he sees a light or something sparks, and what sparked on me, because
Yeah.
it's sad to hear that and see that, and we all know we want to help him. And there's other players like that.
Yeah, we talked. I know Trevor Kidd pretty well, and we talked about that because Kidder was a part of that whole, reaching out. And I know a lot of guys have tried to do a lot of things for him. And yeah, I mean, like you said, he's not the only one. We've lost some good guys,
Right.
And the league is starting to do something about it. And you mentioned the finances, and I think it's relevant, to have that discussion a little bit, because there still is a transition for guys leaving the game now, and not everyone has a 14-year NHL career either, which is the other thing, right? Like there's guys that, don't stay as long as they want, and they do have to prepare for something. But generally, there's money in the bank account for, I don't know how long, a few years, right, to kind of figure it out. During your time, what was the most you made in a season?
300.
300.
Mm-hmm.
And as a 60 goal guy, right? And
No,
we all know that.
I didn't get, no, it wasn't. That year I made 60. I think I was making 120. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, as a 60 goal scorer, so that year you were making less, you end up earning your way to 300, and we know that goes away pretty.
What's a 60 goal scorer making today?
Right. Yeah, ridiculous, right? So when you got out of the game there in 88, 89, was it like you had to go find a job? Was it like almost instantly, or how did that whole thing start?
I stayed and worked with the team in the business side. Advertisements, group tickets, all that kind of stuff. I stayed and that for the 1 year. And it wasn't really right. It was easy for me to get in the door to talk to people and all that, but the person in charge, I won't say his name, but I didn't like his how he handled the situation with the office staff people, and he was in charge, and just yelling and screaming at all the employees and stuff like that, and if you don't sell this, sell that, I'm gonna lose my house and all that. And instead of yelling and screaming, we should have been working with them. And so that's kind of where I got out of it right then, and then got into another job and coached high school hockey. I coached high school hockey in Chaska, Minnesota, and worked for a company called Creative Concepts, promotion items and that for companies. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I did it for 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it wasn't like the struggles then that we spoke about a little bit wasn't necessarily like right after. It was a little bit farther down the road.
Right.
After you left.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. What would you have done different if there was a message to guys now? Because you mentioned, we talked about there is a little more support. Like the NHLPA has some programs that help guys transition. There's definitely places for these guys to go. But would you have done anything different, like while you were playing, to prepare yourself for maybe life after hockey, if you could do it again?
Yeah, I think definitely I would have liked the help, and I think trying to, because going from city to city and stuff like that, with teams moving and franchise moving and being traded and all that, where are you going to end up in your life at the end after you're done? Are you going to be living in that team or living in Minneapolis where I find a career? Or I'm going to go back to Toronto. I think that the message is, save your money. Don't spend it foolishly. They make a lot of money today, and prepare yourself. Get involved in something that you're excited to. Be patient with it. That's what I would have done. I would have maybe become a mortgage broker, really, or banker, whatever it is. I didn't really do any of that. I think that's important to get involved in something that makes that you would enjoy doing. Right. When you're done playing hockey, and you do have the time to prepare yourself as a player today, that I think you do, and even at that time we could have, but you have better resources today than what we had, and I think they should use it. I mean, they make a lot of money. They make millions of dollars, and they can throw it away and and stuff like that. But be smart to, put your money and keep it somewhere, invest it properly, so that you can, give yourself time when you are done to look at and work at something. It may take a couple different situations, but give yourself the time to do it.
Yeah, well, you want to be engaged in life, right? I mean, it's one thing to have money in the bank, but I mean, I don't know. I think to be a contributing human matters to a lot of people, right? So, I mean, just sitting on a beach playing golf, there's not a lot of guys that can do that forever. You know what I mean? They can do it for a while, but you got to change it up at some point and actually, contribute. I think so. I think that is important for these guys now too.
Yeah, and you look at guys that when my time retired, they stayed involved with hockey. Either became scout. They really didn't have anything, so they figured, well, all I've done is play hockey and done hockey, so I'll stay involved with hockey. They coach or junior team, or they scout and all that. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to scout. I didn't want to travel all over the world and be away from family and stuff like that. Even though it'd be neat to do, but if I was single, different story. But I mean, coaching I tried that coaching in the minors. That didn't last because of the, I didn't feel right doing it. All that. I'm a players coach guy. I mean, I would love to help teams, and I love coaching kids. I love working with kids and girls and boys. I've always done. I've run camps, all that kind of stuff over the years, and I really enjoy it. Shooting camps. Cool.
Yeah, I love it too. I love working with the kids now. It's really rewarding, and seeing their eyes light up and that twinkle, and this is some dots connect every once in a while. It's great. It's great to see that. Well, we'll wrap it up. We've been here an hour. I really appreciate your time, and I'll two questions to wrap up. If you got the time here, one is I like to ask sometimes is what you're most proud of, and what you would change if you could change anything again, because sometimes both those questions kind of surprise me, because maybe it's not what I think. But what are you most proud of during your time as an NHL player in the 888 games?
Well, I would say the most proud of is making my parents proud. I shed a little tear here. So for what they had to go through with 8 kids and all that, and making it to the NHL, I'd be most proud of that. What would I do differently? Was to be the things that happened to me personally off the ice, to be better prepared mentally and physically, knowing the fact that as an athlete, your career doesn't go for the rest of your life, and you need to prepare yourself for the latter part of your life. And I think that's what I would have done differently.
No, it's beautiful. No, I appreciate that. And parents, I mean, how do you not get choked up about parents? It's now being a parent and being on the other side of that, and really realizing what my parents did for me, right? Like to open the doors that they did. And there's a lot of sacrifice involved there. And then to see your kids do well, I'm sure they're super proud of you too. So Dennis, thank you for your time. remarkable career, and really glad that I was able to dive into it, because some really special accomplishments, and the longevity and everything else is something that should be recognized, and I want people to be buying that book too and supporting you that way. That's a great thing, and thank you for sharing.
Enjoy the book.
Perfect.
You will.
All right, Dennis, thanks so much for being here today.
Anytime. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for sticking with us on episode number 35 and listening to the end. It really choked me up a little bit when Dennis was getting choked up there after all the stuff that he's been through, all the stories that he told, and then you ask him what he's most proud of, and it's making his parents proud, and that's touching. I know parents have a big impact, and I know there's a lot of parents listening to this podcast weekly, trying to support their kids, and it's special. We want the best for our kids for sure, and we want to open as many doors as possible for them. And I'm going to continue to try and provide one of those resources for the athletes out there that want to be better. And hearing stories like Dennis's and from my other guests, I really do think that helps apply some perspective and apply some level of acknowledgement. People are capable of doing hard things, and there's no easy road anywhere. And for Dennis, it was being 5'8". It was playing on teams that weren't that strong. It was, trying to be recognized for what he was accomplishing in the show, and then for also his challenges after hockey. And we all have challenges. We spoke about mental health today, and I think one of the great lessons from today is that don't do it by yourself. You don't get to the NHL by yourself. You don't stay in the NHL by yourself. You don't deal with adversity by yourself. It's an unhealthy way to do it. Find somebody, whether that's a professional or whether that's a loved one or whether that's a friend. We need to be able to speak about what's going on. And, I continue to be an advocate for mental health and for really providing a level of self-awareness so athletes have the tools to be able to deal with whatever challenges and adversity they may face along the way. And I think that's a really important thing for athletes and for humans, right? To recognize that, we need to apply some perspective to the challenges, to some of these things that happen to us, and we can find a way through, and we can position it that it is a positive and it's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And these are all tools in the toolkit. It's one thing that I talk about a lot in my parent group on Facebook. It's one thing I talk a lot about with my private clients. And it's the ability to understand that these emotions exist, and it's what we do with them next. Not that there's anything wrong with us for having these emotions, and we're allowed to have these emotions as hockey players, but we are able to get through them. We are able to move past them with some support and with some tools and with some tips. So for anyone out there, keep rocking it. You can get through whatever it is. For young hockey players, maybe things are going smooth. That's amazing. I love it. But usually a bump in the road comes, and when a bump in the road comes, you can get through it too with the proper support and with the proper tools. So hope everyone's doing well out there. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.